More of Jacob to discuss, and we can finally move on from his messy life and get into the life of Joseph, which, quite frankly, is much more fun. And so tonight, we'll pick it up in 32, but first, let's pray. Lord, I thank you that we have the opportunity to look at your word, and how I pray that you would guide us tonight, that you would help us to see the things you want us to see, and that you would move us along in your way. We thank you. Amen. So, Genesis 32, where we left Jacob was on the side of the Jabbok River, or creek, depending on what it looked like at the time there. He had Laban behind him, who had drawn a line in the sand and said, if you come back this way, I can't promise that I won't be nice. And he had Esau in front of him, and the last time he saw Esau, Esau said, I'm going to kill you next time I see you. That's what he had. And he had his oldest son, couldn't have been more than 14, 15 years old. And his youngest was probably not any older than 6. And that's what he had. He had servants and flocks and herds, but he really didn't have any protection. And he was concerned. We discussed this on Sunday. We talked about his prayer, which I think is just fantastic. How he remembers the grace of God in his past, how it's the grace of God who's gotten him where he is. When he left, he said, I had nothing. When I left running away from home, a sinner, I had nothing but my staff. And yet you, God, your grace went before me and guided me and protected me. And now look, I have 2 camps. So protect me from Esau, he prays, because you have made promises to me. And that's great, at least until he starts making backup plans. Just in case that doesn't work, that prayer to God, I'm going to make sure that I've got a really good gift for Esau. And so he starts setting apart a tremendous gift. We talked about that on Sunday as well, trying to save himself. I thought about that for a while. Somebody needs to tell Jacob that his cunning is not going to save him. It's his cunning that got him in this spot. It is not his wealth or his power or his influence or his capability, or his popularity, or his niceness, or his attractiveness, or his generosity that can save him. All of these things he used to get into this mess. The only thing that can save him now is the grace of God. Lindsay and I went to Barnes & Noble yesterday. That was kind of fun. We had way too many books when we left. Fortunately, she had a gift card to cover a lot of that. And got some cool books. And as we wandered around from section to section, I couldn't help but look and see what was in the religion department. It's almost like they have a Christianity department and then an everything else department. That was pretty interesting. And then the really interesting stuff that I couldn't help but just look at the titles was in the self-help area. That always just gets me, the self-help area, the reinventing yourself part of it. Oh, and they've got stuff in business about that. They've even got stuff in the gardening and hobby section about reinventing self-help psychology. Here are some of the more popular titles that you've probably already heard of. How to Win Friends and Influence People. That one's been around a long time. That's classic. And of course, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Required reading in the business world. There are some that might be new to you. One of them is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Care. Then there is, this is a good one, The Let Them Theory. A life-changing tool millions of people can't stop talking about. I don't know who those millions are. I've never heard of it before. And then there are some deeply psychological titles like Can't Hurt Me, Master Your Mind, and Defy the Odds. It's interesting. Or Daring Greatly, How the Courage to be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Parent, and Lead. There are a great many of these books like this, and they all have basically the same overall theme. And here is the theme. You, my friend, are currently a big mess. Your life is in shambles. I know this because you're buying this book. And then they go on to explain how you got yourself into this mess. Even if you have been abused, misused, and cast away, It is your response to that abuse and misuse which has gotten you into this mess. It is your messed up thinking, your messed up actions that have gotten you into this mess. And so, third point, you can think and act your way out of it. You got into this mess. You can get yourself back out of it. I mean, think about that. Somebody's doing time for hard crime. They got themselves into that jail. They can behave their way out of it. Maybe? I don't know how that works. But really, it's nothing new. Think about Adam and Eve back in the garden. Their choices led to their loss of identity, their loss of purpose, and complete destruction of all of their relationships. And yet they determined that they would fix it. They made themselves fig leaves for clothes, and they went and hid, and they thought up some good excuses for when God came around. We thought ourselves into this mess. We're going to think our way out of it. Can you slow your way out of a speeding ticket? No. Can we, this is a big topic in the news right now, can we tariff our way back to U.S. manufacturing? I mean, can we turn back time on the U.S. economy and lift ourselves up by our bootstraps? Now listen, I'm actually kind of a fan of the tariffs, but that alone, are we going to be able to policy our way back to what we used to be? I mean, we policied our way into this mess. Or are we going to need some outside help? Do you think? Actually, Alaska is a really good study on this. You who are from Alaska know this a lot better than me. But the Alaskan state government has faced bankruptcy and insolvency multiple times in its history. Even when the oil was flowing down the pipeline, the state government was still facing bankruptcy. The first time that happened was in 1964. Early in 1964, the almost brand new Alaskan state government was in absolute shambles financially and did not know what they were going to do. They could trace the pattern of how they got into this mess, but had no way of getting out of it. But then, on Good Friday, came a really big earthquake that took out the city of Anchorage, and the federal government responded with lots of bailout and money, and people started coming from all over the Lower 48 to help out, and boom, good times are here again. It happened again in 1988. Early in 1988, the government realized that by mid-1989, they were going to have a major problem. And they could not, I mean, listen, wasn't that about the peak of oil production? They were sending like millions of barrels down the pipeline every day. And the state government was strangled. They could not figure out what to do to get out. They could see how they got into this mess. Same way they got into it back in 1964, quite frankly, but they couldn't figure out a way out of it. And then, in March of 1989, the Exxon Valdez spilled millions of barrels of oil into the Prince William Sound, and the federal government responded with all of this bailout money, which they didn't really use to clean up the mess. Other people did that, but now they had money. I don't know the state of the Alaska state government right now. I don't really want to look. Hopefully it's not like that again, but if it is, come on, we can easily get ourselves into this mess, but can we get ourselves back out of it? Jacob is about to try. He divides all of his property into two camps. We talked about that. He called on the Lord. We talked about that. And then he wrestled with God. Do you remember that? We talked about that a few Sundays ago now. Here's the interesting thing about him wrestling with God. It was not him calling on God to wrestle. We talk about wrestling in prayer. That's fine. This is not what Jacob was doing. God showed up demanding something from Jacob, and Jacob didn't want to give it up. And the thing we learned that God was demanding from Jacob was surrender. Jacob, quit trying to mess it up on your own. There's nothing you can do to fix this. If you will knock it off, Jacob, I can step in and take care of this for you. But as long as you're trying to do it, there's nothing I can do for you, Jacob. We talked about this on Sunday. There is an old poem. We're not entirely sure who wrote it, but it's mostly attributed to Oswald J. Sanders, who lived from 1874 to 1917. And the poem goes like this. When God wants to drill a man and thrill a man and skill a man, when God wants to mold a man to play the noblest part, when he yearns with all his heart to create so great and bold a man that all the world shall be amazed, watch his methods, watch his ways, how he ruthlessly perfects whom he royally elects, how he hammers him and hurts him, and with mighty blows converts him into trial shapes of clay which only God understands, while his tortured heart is crying and he lifts beseeching hands, how he bends but never breaks when his good he undertakes, how he uses whom he chooses, at which every purpose fuses him, by every act induces him to try his splendor out. God knows what he's all about. In other words, when God wants to do something particularly fantastic in someone's life, the first thing he must do is break him down and get him to release his pride. Pride is that thing of self-worship, that internal idolatry. John Wesley said that is the root of all sin, basically thinking that I am, in a sense, my own God. I can do it myself. I can fix it myself. It's that 3-year-old inside of each of us. I can do it myself, which of course is not going to work and is going to cause problems, and somebody's going to have to bail us out. And eventually we learn we can't do it ourselves and we start accepting help. God comes along and says, listen, I want to do something fantastic in your life. I got big plans for you. I want to use you for great things. But in order to do that, you're going to have to quit deciding how that's going to work. Jacob, I'm going to make you into a mighty nation. But the way you're going, my friend, you're going to be alone and in despair. Oh, I have great plans for you to make you a mighty nation. But Jacob, you got to stop messing it up, because everywhere you go, you just mess it up. You got to stop thinking your way into a mess and just let me take care of it from this point. Jacob, you came and prayed and said, God, I ain't going to make it without you. You've offered me grace to this point. You're offering me grace to the future. I got this huge problem ahead of me, God, that I cannot solve, but you know I'm going to try anyway. And God comes to Jacob and says, you got to stop it. You got to stop trying to solve it. It's one of the things I really enjoy about our Wesleyan holiness tradition is this understanding that the first step to holiness is not piety. In other words, the first step to being the kind of person that God calls us to be is not behaving right. It's not following all the rules and making sure I always wear my tie buttoned up, shirt on, and all for Sunday, my shoes are polished, and I never say any bad words. That's not the first step to holiness. The first step to holiness is not, well, I set aside a half an hour every day just to read my Bible. That's all I do for a half hour. That's not the first step to holiness. The first step to holiness is surrender, is complete submission to God. Because we can't do the whole holiness thing, you see. We can't earn it. We can't make it happen. We can't do it on our own. I love these. Be a victorious Christian. Live a victorious life. I love the concept. I mean, for years I was like, I just got to be a victorious Christian. I'll tell you what, the first step to being victorious is to admitting that you've already lost. That's the first step to winning, because you can't do it. You know, one of the most beautiful scenes in all the Bible is back in the book of the Revelation, when Jesus comes back and he brings his church with him. And this time, he ain't fooling. This time, he is going to absolutely kick the tail of the enemy. He is going to defeat all of the human, natural enemies that he has here on earth. He's done letting them do what they want to do. But more importantly, he's going to defeat the enemies of the spiritual realm, take them down and lock him up. And so he comes back with all of us. Why? So we can fight? He comes back, we're equipped, right? We're wearing the camos and we got the bazookas and we're ready to go. No, we're all dressed in white robes. He's the only one with a weapon. We just stand there and watch. Come on, what can we do to defeat the forces of darkness? Tell me one thing you've done in your life that defeated the forces of darkness. Martin Luther tried. He threw his ink pot at them. He farted at them. None of it worked. He couldn't defeat the forces of darkness. How are we going to defeat the forces of? We're not. But by then, through prayer, we are protected, and he comes and defeats. Good call. We fight on our knees, that is true, but being on your knees is a sign of submission. That's what we do. That's what we do. We surrender. He takes care of the problems. He comes to Jacob and he says, "Boy, are you about done?" Jacob says, "Nope." And they wrestle all night. They wrestle all night. Now, there's this thing in there. We talked about this a couple Sundays ago, and if it confuses you, you really got to go look at the sermon on Sunday morning. We really kind of broke this down because there's this thing about how God sees that he could not overpower him. That's how it's worded in English. It's really hard. The idea is God could at any time just squash him like a bug, but he chooses not to. He wants Jacob to just surrender, and when he sees that Jacob is not going to surrender, he gives him some motivation to surrender. He just touches his hip. He doesn't smack him around. He just touches his hip. And all of a sudden, Jacob is debilitated at the hip. And from this point on, he walks with a limp. And I think that's fantastic because what has Jacob done every time he gets into trouble? He has run away. Every time he gets in trouble, he runs. He runs from the people from whom he has made angry. Again and again and again. And God says, "Dude, you ain't running no more. Now what are you going to do? You can't run anymore." Now I think about Paul talking about the thorn in his flesh and how 3 times he prayed that God would remove it, and God said, "No, because it's by my weakness that you have strength. When you are weak, I am strong. When you quit trying to fight, I can step in to fight." Yeah, that's good right there. That's good. We were loading a bouncy house in the back of a pickup truck today. Full-size commercial, probably 25 by 25 bouncy house. You ever picked one of those up? They got to weigh 600 pounds. They're just brutal. They're floppy. Absolutely brutal. So I'm out there with some of the kids who came to our VBS camp, and they were Russian-speaking, most of them. There was one girl that was very bilingual, one that was just a little bit bilingual, and 2 strong, strapping young men that knew no English. And we're out there trying to load this thing. Now, me and the boys were working out a plan. But the girls wanted to be involved. And they kept getting in the way. And we couldn't get this stupid thing into the back of the pickup without knocking them down. Finally, they just kind of stood back and we loaded it. It wasn't easy. There was lots of yelling and groaning, but we got it in there. Sooner or later, you have to be willing to say, all I'm doing is getting in the way, you go, God. And here is God telling Jacob, are you ready to give up? Because when you're weak, when you admit it and you get out of the way, then I can step in and do that. And so, in verse 25, we see him touch Jacob's hip socket and dislocated his hip. And then he said to Jacob, now this is interesting, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." God came and wrestled Jacob, but now Jacob is clinging to God. What's going on here? This person who is representing God, this man who is God in the flesh, is wrestling with him, has defeated him now, but Jacob won't let go. Jacob says, "I will not let you go until you bless me." I like this. It's like Jacob has finally realized he needs a blessing directly from God. He needs to be filled with good things directly from God. He's tried to steal the blessing in the past. Now he needs it directly from God. I am clinging to you because if I don't have this from you, I cease to exist. All right, God says, "What's your name?" This is not because he didn't know his name. This is a redirect. This is just making him say it out loud. He says his name, Yaakov, which is a Hebrew term that means heel snatcher, which is a euphemism for deceiver. What's your name? Liar, deceiver, supplanter. That's my name. Yep. God says, "I'm aware of that, but not anymore. I'm giving you a new name, Yaakov. No longer will you be Kov, now you will be Yisrael, Israel." Yisrael. It means two things simultaneously. It means strives with God, or wrestles with God. And it also means governed by God, or ruled by God. This is why in ages to come, they referred to Israel as the Prince of God, because God is his king. Yisrael, ruled by God. Why? Because you have struggled with man and with God and have overcome. How did he overcome? Through surrender. He gave up, and so he won. And then we see him, that following morning, we see this fantastic thing. He named that place Peniel, Peniel, and then in 31, you see the sun shone on him as he passed by Penuel. Don't let that mess you up. That's just two Hebrew spellings of the same term. Remember, Hebrews didn't have vowels, so it gets a little sticky. And the thing that's really cool is this. Where did it go? The sun shone on him as he passed by or passed over. It's the term Hebrew. He became a Hebrew. He became one who passes over, one who has gone from death to life, one who has left behind his citizenship in the old world and now has a citizenship in the new world. He is truly a pilgrim now on his way to the new world. And we talked about what it meant that the sun shined on him. You can look that up if you want to know. That's where we find him, limping and tired out in the morning, but at least he's finally ready to let God do it. Now, verse 33, he is back on the side of the Jabbok River, the south side of the Jabbok River or creek, with all of his family and all of his stuff. He has sent ahead of him these three sections of gifts. You can read about the massive flocks and herds that he gave to Esau. He has sent those ahead. Those have met Esau already. Esau is coming from the south. Seir, the area called Seir, around Mount Seir, is as far south as the south end of the Dead Sea on the east side of Jordan. This part, the Jabbok, and the part we call Peniel, this is north of the Sea of Galilee. So if you can picture that map in your mind or look in the back of your Bible and see that, Esau has made a long trip. Remember that that side of the Jordan is basically just desert. There's not a whole lot going on that side of the Jordan River. And Esau has been on his way for a while. Esau is traveling very quickly. It's just him and an army of 400 men. Jacob is traveling very slowly. He's got his flocks and herds. Esau's made good time. Jacob gets up in the morning, crosses the river. There's his family. He's feeling pretty good. He's feeling all surrendered and all that. He looks up and what does he see? The army coming. Isn't that the way it is? Our kids just came back from youth camp a couple weeks ago. Awesome. Awesome time. Haven't heard the stories yet. I know I will. They got back all pumped, stoked, full of the Spirit, ready to roll. I'm sure Monday morning all hell broke loose. I haven't heard the stories yet, but I have no doubt. That's how it is. You get to that point of surrender, everything's good. You just feel like you could take on the world, and then the world starts coming. You're like, oh, I didn't mean it. Jacob looks up. Here comes the armies of Esau coming at him with 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two slave women. He put the slaves and their children first, Leah and her children next, Rachel and Joseph last. He's got a plan here. And he himself went on ahead. He goes first. And here's what he does. He bowed to the ground 7 times until he approached his brother. So as he saw Esau coming with his 400 men, he bowed. He did not lay down flat on the ground like we see Abraham do in worship to God. He's not worshiping Esau. This is a over-the-top greeting of diplomacy in these days. He's bowing at the hip until his upper body is parallel with the ground. He's doing it 7 times. Why? 7 is the number of completion. He's doing it as he walks. He walks a little bit, stops, bows. Walks a little bit, stops, bows. Walks a little bit, stops, bows. He's sending a message to Esau. I am not here to fight with you. I am here to have good relationship with you. Basically, he's waving the white flag right off the bat. He comes up to Esau. He approaches his brother. He is clearly expecting the worst. But, verse 4, what he did not expect happened. Esau ran to meet him, hugged him, kissed him, and threw his arms around him, and they wept. Esau ran to meet him. We've talked about this. Dignified Middle Eastern men don't run. Oh no, the slaves can run. The servants can run. The boys can run. The men don't run. To this day, dignified Middle Eastern men are too important to run. They are too important to be in a hurry at all. What should have happened is Esau could have been sitting on an animal at that point, a donkey or a camel or a horse or even just walking. He should have said his name, Yaakov, extended his hand or his staff or something to indicate that he wasn't going to hurt him, and then Jacob could approach him. That's what should have happened. But Esau is overcome with emotion. When he sees his brother, especially when he sees his brother being surrendered and honest, he longs for relationship with his twin brother. That's amazing. This is so much more than anything Jacob could have even imagined. I, a number of years ago, worked with a friend of mine to start a company. It was a very customer service-driven company. And I had a lot of business-to-business level customers. And occasionally things would go wrong. And sometimes I would get a phone call from my office saying, such and such a customer is very angry with us. Great. Somebody messed things up. Here we go. And I was always the one to go take point and go out and smooth it over with the customer. Now, I've long had a philosophy. If you make a customer happy every time, whatever, they're fine with that. Great. You made them happy. That's nice. They don't really become a really good customer until something goes wrong and you can make it right. And in the way that you make it right, then they become a loyal lifetime customer. So there was part of me that was always looking for this opportunity, but there was part of me that dreaded it, especially when I knew the person I was about to go see and they were particularly vicious. And I remember more than once sitting out in the parking lot in my company car, just saying a little prayer. Lord, I don't know what's about to happen in here, but I am very nervous to talk to this person. I don't want to lose this account. It's very important to the company. I don't really want to be berated by this person. I really don't. Especially when, honestly, it has nothing to do with me. It's not my fault at all. I'm just the cleanup man. So I would appreciate it if you would make our relationship stronger when I leave than when I got here. And I'm telling you what, it wasn't like some magic thing, but every time I stopped and prayed something like that before going in and seeing the person, every time, praying something specific about the person or their situation, every time, it was awesome. I would go in there and say, oh, I heard about this. I'm so sorry. I always led with that. I didn't want them to tell me the problem. I want to tell them the problem. I heard what happened and, I'm making some plans to make it right. What can I do? And they'd always be like, oh, yeah. It's really not that big of a deal, they'd say. In one way or the other, it's not that big of a deal. I'm glad you're taking care of it. Can you get it done by the end of the day? I'm gonna. All right, well, I'm not worried. You know what? Thanks for coming and taking care of that for me. Every time Jacob has stopped and prayed, I am having problems with Esau. I am concerned about my relationship. God, will you do something about it? Do you remember one of the things that we are created for? Perfect relationship between all of us. Do you remember the fact that Jesus himself prayed that we would be one, united? There's people within this church that you probably struggle with. We have personality clashes. It's okay. Somebody stepped on your puppy. All right, it happens. You can try to fix it yourself, or you can go to Christ and say, you want me to have perfect relationships. You want us to be united. Will you step in here? Oh, but maybe the person is not a Christian. Maybe they don't know Christ at all. Lord, will you step in here and fix this relationship? I want this relationship stronger than it used to be so that they come to know you. I'm not saying it's going to be that easy, but if you pray it and you mean it and you keep at it, that's something he prayed for. That's good stuff right there. Esau ran to meet him, hugged him, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. And they wept. I read an old commentary today about this exact concept, a commentary that comes out of the 19th century. So there's a different view of the Bible on scholars that come kind of pre-World War II. And I really wanted to know what that particular scholar had to say about this concept of the greeting. And he said this was essentially a kind of a fully expected, mutually beneficial, heavily emotional Middle Eastern greeting. And that you will still, he said at that point, see these kinds of things today among people who've been separated for a great period of time. This is coming from a culture where you got a lot on the schedule, you got a lot you need to do. You don't fix that hole in your roof, it's raining tomorrow kind of situation. You run down to the Home Depot to get some supplies, and you see a friend that you haven't seen in a couple years, and you guys get to talking at the Home Depot, and about 2 hours later, you decide to go out to dinner, and you're at dinner for 6 or 7 hours. And your project didn't get done, and nobody cares because it's much more important to have relationship. That's where this comes from. And that's what these two guys did. When Esau looked up and saw the women and children, he asked, "Who are these with you?" Remember, last time he saw Yaakov, he was just a single snot-nosed brat. Now he's got this huge family. Listen to Jacob's answer. "These are the children God has graciously given your servant." Calling Esau his Lord and him the servant is just being overly polite. But he doesn't say, yeah, this is my family. He says, these are those that God has graciously given me. I like that. Even to Esau, he is being so humble. Then the slaves, Bilhah and Zilpah, they come and they and their children approach him and bow down. Leah and her children also approached and bow down. Then Joseph and Rachel approached and bowed down. This is just going from the least important to the most important in Jacob's eyes. His heart is still with Rachel and Joseph. We're thinking that Joseph is about 6 years old at this point, somewhere between 6 and 7, when he comes and bows before Uncle Esau. Then Esau says, "What do you mean by this whole procession I met? All of the herds. What are you trying to do, Jacob?" And Jacob is very honest. "To find favor, or quite literally, to buy grace." Do you remember what grace is? Unmerited favor. Well, I'm trying to earn some favor. I'm trying to earn some grace with you. Look at Jacob's response. Look at Esau's response. Verse 9. "I have enough." It's an interesting 2-word Hebrew phrase. I have enough. It's almost an uncouth phrase. It's blunt, it's quick, and it gives all credit to himself. And that's telling. Because even when you look at Laban, who was a pagan, who worshiped multiple little statues, even he would credit the good things in his life to his statues. We saw that. This is a common way to indicate something like that in the Middle East. God has given me. My gods have taken care of me. But Esau simply says, I have enough. It comes back to the blessing that Isaac gave him after Jacob stole the blessing that was going to be for his. And Isaac said, "You will live by your sword." And while we don't have specific historical details, we understand that Esau is in Mount Seir and that Esau has 400 men, armed men, working for him because Esau went into a community in the Mount Seir region and conquered it. He took it. And he said, "I am your new king, and you now all are my slaves." That with his sword, with his bow and arrow, and those that he had with him, he went and conquered that community which is in present-day Jordan, which includes the city of Petra, where the Edomites lived. He has come and conquered that. I have enough, not God has given me enough. I have enough. I went and got enough on my own. That's going to be important in a couple of minutes. "I have enough, my brother," Esau replied. "Keep what you have." Verse 10, "But Jacob said, 'No, please. If I have found favor with you, take this gift from me. For indeed I have seen your face, and it is like seeing the face of God, since you have accepted me. Please take my present that was brought to you, because God has been gracious to me, and I have everything I need.' So Jacob urged him until he accepted." I want to pick out a couple of phrases and discuss this. like seeing God's face or like seeing the face of God. That does not mean that Esau looks like God to Jacob, or that Jacob thinks that God has sent Esau to him, or that Jacob thinks that God is Esau's messenger. It means a combination of things, or perhaps one of these four. Either Jacob is saying, in this situation, I see the work of God. I see the hand of God here. Or it means, I have been accepted by you because of God. Or perhaps, since I have been accepted and can tell the presence of God, being accepted by you is like being accepted by God. Here's the really interesting thing. Originally, he said, I'm giving you these things because I'm trying to buy grace. But that doesn't last. Now he says, I'm giving you these things because I have found grace. Grace which has come from God. This is so important. And it speaks to the concept of the tithe. You see this all through Jacob's life. Matter of fact, one of the first things he says to God is, you'll be my God, I'll be your guy, I'll give you a tenth. It's very important, this concept of the tithe. Matter of fact, one of the last things that God discusses with the people of Israel is the concept of the tithe. He says, you are robbing me. And they say, how are we robbing you? And he says, you're not bringing the full tithe into the storehouse. And God, who says, do not test the Lord your God, said, hey, test me in this. Bring the full tithe in the storehouse and see if I won't open the windows of heaven. Now, good preachers use this as a money-raising technique all the time. But there's a tremendous truth behind it. I have told people before when teaching tithing, when teaching on this concept, I mean, you guys hear me talk about this almost every week. This is a major part of surrender. There are some things we must surrender to Him if we are to truly be surrendered. One of them is our time. That's a really hard one. But setting aside time for nothing but God, quite frankly, even if you feel it was rather non-productive. Well, I didn't get anything out of the reading today. I could barely pray. I was so sleepy. You set aside time specifically for Him. You gave Him your time. Time you could have been doing something else with. But you give Him that portion of time. You are surrendering to Him your whole day by setting aside this portion. That's so important. That's so important. That is the beginning of surrendering to Him your entire life, your entire future. One of the things that will continually draw you away from Him is the stuff of this world. Just the things. Needing to have a place to live. Needing to have transportation. Needing to have clothes on your back and food to eat. Needing to have a steady paycheck. Oh, now I've got kids. I need to have all this stuff. The things that you need, the stuff of life, will continually draw you away from Him. And you got choices. You can try to surrender each and everything individually. Okay, God, this shirt here that I'm wearing, this is your shirt, belongs to you only. I will wear it only on Wednesdays. You could. Oh, sorry, God, I got to borrow the car to go to Costco. I know I surrendered it to you. You could try that. But the stuff of the world is going to continually draw you. And the problem with that is what Jesus said in Matthew that we just studied not too long ago. In Matthew, where Jesus says, hey, you know what? You just can't serve two masters. You're going to end up loving the one and hating the other. And if you try to serve the master of the stuff of this world, it's going to continually be at you. You got to have a bigger, newer car. You got to live in a nicer house. You got to get a bigger paycheck. You got to buy your wife something better for your anniversary. Don't forget that. You got to do these things. Well, that means I got to work more overtime. I got to give more of my life away to making more money so I can acquire more stuff. It'll draw you to the point where you cannot serve God. Listen, folks, I'm preaching of what I have lived. I mean, there was a time I was climbing the corporate ladder. I was doing quite well. And it was drawing me completely away from God, little by little, day by day, month by month. It was drawing me away from Him until really I had nothing left to give Him because I was giving it all away to making something in this world. Now, you can try to surrender each thing piece by piece. You can't. You can try it. Even if you only got 4 things, you're going to struggle. Or you can just say, you know what, God, everything I have is yours. Everything I am and everything I have is yours. How are we going to do that? Well, it's the tithe. Listen, he doesn't need your money. Esau doesn't need Jacob's stuff. Esau is much wealthier than Jacob. He owns a town. All right? It'd be like this. Let's say that Elon Musk and I become good friends. My buddy Elon comes over for dinner once or twice a week. I go and hang out with his kids, like X I go and hang out with rather regularly, and we're just buddies. Me and Elon, we're good buddies. And you know, I mean, I have you guys sell my cars and what I drive. I have that old Oldsmobile and that's 50 odd years old, and I have my 13-year-old pickup truck. And those are my vehicles, and well, it's a nice pickup truck. And I want to do something for my buddy Elon. I want to give him something. I want to give him something cool, the best I've got. So I decide I'm going to give Elon my pickup truck. I don't know if you guys know this, but Elon Musk owns Tesla. I mean, he could have a new Cybertruck every day if he wanted one. Does he need my pickup truck? No. Is he ever even going to use it? No, he has no need for that. He has no need for that. I'm not giving it to him because he needs it. I'm giving it to him out of friendship and relationship. I'm giving it to him because I'm saying, Elon, you're such an important guy in my life. I want you to have the most important vehicle to me. It's a little bit like, it's a bad example, but it's a little bit like us going to God and giving him, he doesn't need our, come on, he owns the universe. What's he going to do with my $10? Well, that's not the point. The point is I am surrendering myself completely to him. As I give you this thing, I am surrendering myself to you. I'm not buying grace. I'm not saying, God, listen, I'm going to give you $10 so that you'll give me back 100. I'm not buying grace. Oh, maybe initially. Maybe I heard the preacher preaching on Malachi 3, he'll open the windows of blessing. And maybe I realize that my personal economy's been a disaster. And maybe I think preacher might have something there. And maybe the preacher made the challenge, like I often do, that if somebody wants to start tithing and just see how it works, we'll make a deal. We can make a deal for 3 months, 6 months, or maybe even 9 months, where if you tithe, you're going to do it, you're going to tithe 1/10 of your income. Every time you get a paycheck, you're going to give a tithe. I'll take that money and put it in a special account. Church won't touch it. And you come back to me in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and you tell me if you want it back. You tell me if he hasn't taken care of you like he said. You tell me if you haven't grown spiritually like you'd like to. And if that's not happening, I'll give it back. I have made that challenge. I have had people take me up on that, and I have never had a person ask me for any of it back. Maybe to begin with, you're trying to buy grace. But as you see the grace of God come to you, now you want to surrender. Living in this kind of surrender is so good, God. I don't want to miss out on the surrender that you're making happen for me. I don't want to miss out on all that you're doing, Lord. So I'm just going to surrender more and more of myself continuously. This is the change we see in Yaakov. He says, I'm buying grace. But now that I see the grace that God has made possible in our relationship, I want you to have this. I want you to have this. Now, I really hope that that's the motivation for Jacob. But there might be one other. When you have a situation like this, where a lesser person is giving a gift to a greater person, especially on the heels of a dispute, for the greater person to accept the gift is making the legal statement that the dispute is settled and gone. This you could cut covenant, we've talked about that, but cutting covenant makes a legal arrangement, but it doesn't help the relationship. To give the gift like this from a lesser person to a greater person and have the greater person receive the gift. When that greater person says, I accept the gift, what he's saying, I mean legally and culturally in that society, all is forgiven, everything's forgotten, we're on great terms now. If Esau would have seen Jacob there, and Jacob comes and bows 7 times, and Esau comes up and thumps him in the head and kills everybody, societally, that would have been fine. That would have been considered just fine. based on what Jacob's done, that would have been considered just. Nobody would have had a problem with that at all. But if Esau accepts this gift and then causes Jacob harm, well, then Esau is a massive jerk. And nobody's going to... He's more of a jerk for doing that than just conquering the people of Mount Seir. You understand? So there might be a little bit of that going on. Please accept the gift. I don't know. I think that was just a bonus. But the brilliant thing is Jacob urged him until he accepted. And with Esau accepting, he is now saying there is nothing negative between us. And we're actually going to see these guys get together in the future. I mean, issue settled. So cool what God can do, huh? I mean, every other time we've seen these guys, they're at each other's throats, and now God has fixed it in his grace. Jacob prays, God fixes. Then Esau said, let's move on, and I'll go ahead of you. Remember, Esau is going due south. Jacob wants to go into the promised land, which he could go south for a while, but eventually he needs to go west. He needs to cross the Jordan. Esau says, let's keep going, I'll go ahead of you. He is offering his protection traveling through a foreign land. Jacob replied, my Lord knows that the children are weak, and I have nursing flocks and herds. If they are driven hard for one day, the whole herd will die. He's actually making a brilliant statement here. It seems that this is winter time when they're traveling, which is a dry season and a little bit cooler. I mean, traveling through the desert. This is also the time that the ewes are giving milk to the lambs. And both the sheep and the lambs are very fragile in those days. And they would, if you pushed them for a day, they'd die. So Jacob is saying, I am going to travel really, really slowly. He says, let my Lord go ahead of his servant. I will continue slowly at a pace suited to the livestock and their children until I come to my Lord at Mount Seir. But Esau said, let me leave some of my people with you then. So I'll leave you protection. But Jacob replied, why do that? Please indulge me, my Lord. Now, there could be one of two things going on here. Depends on who you are and what you think's happening. Jacob could be saying, I'm so fully dependent on God, I don't need any of your protection, I'm good. Why would you leave? I don't need him. Why would you leave security? I don't need security, I'm fine. God's watching out for me. Or he could be trying to trick Esau. And it really reads both ways. Here in English, when we read it in English, it looks like what Jacob is trying to do is get rid of Esau, push him off, saying to Esau, I'll come to Mount Seir, and then we're going to find out he doesn't come. Or it could be that he really is trusting in God. Let's keep going, see if we can figure it out. Verse 16. So that day Esau started on his way back to Seir, but Jacob went to Succoth. You've heard of the Feast of Tabernacles or the Feast of Booths, the Feast of Succoth, we say. Succoth, that's that word. He went to a place that he named Booths. And he built a house for himself and shelters for his livestock, and that's the reason the place was called Succoth. So he goes a little bit further and he stops, probably for the rest of the winter. As the winter progresses and begins to turn to spring, we get into the rainy season. And it is the rainiest of the rainy season there in the spring, and it would make traveling through that area a real pain in the neck. And he would probably lose a number of animals in trying to travel through the rain. And so he stops kind of south of Galilee along the Jordan, still on the east side of the Jordan. And he says, we're going to have to winter here. And he does something that we have not seen any of God's people do to this point. He builds himself a house. I mean, the booths for the livestock, the shelters for the livestock, little barns, that makes sense. I mean, it's a bad time of year. I mean, we live in Alaska. You're going to leave your cow out all winter? I mean, it's a bad time of the year. So that makes sense. And actually, this term refers to these shelters that are made from like reeds and basically sticks and reeds. And apparently, the Bedouins, there aren't very many of them left, who still travel through that desert, do this in the wintertime. So either he was part of that or he saw that and he decided this would be a good way to go. So he builds a house for himself. And it would seem that he stayed there for some time. He might have intended to just keep going down to Sierra like he said. We don't know how long he's there, but we're going to find out in a few minutes that he goes down to Shechem, to a place that they know of as Shechem. And by then, his boys are grown up, and his daughter Dinah, who is somewhere here between 6 and 12, is a young woman by the time he makes it down there. It seems that he stays there for a while. Why do you suppose that is? Never could figure that out before until I moved to Alaska. Tell you what, when I was, the church that we led in Mount Vernon was a great church. We clawed our way through the COVID season. It was hard work. We lost 9 people in 2021 to death. And none of them were directly COVID related. They were just important people. One of them was probably my best friend in Mount Vernon, a guy about my age. He and Hayden and I worked on all kinds of cars and trucks together and just had a great time. Super guy. He just, one Friday morning, he woke up not feeling good, decided he wasn't going to go to work. About a half hour later, he had a heart attack, hauled him off to the hospital. He was gone within 2 hours. Another one was another guy. He was 82. He was also a really good friend of mine. He had the sweetest 55 Chevy. And he had me do a bunch of work on his Chevy, and we just got to know each other real well. And man, he came to Christ in an incredible way. He'd been one of those kind of guys that just kind of hang around church, you know. We had actually Dr. Rob McCorkle, who's come in here, came to Mount Vernon and led a revival service for us. And man, tell you what, this guy was never the same after that. Oh, it was wonderful. And he'd had a heart valve replacement. He was doing great. And he got like a little bit of a cold, and it turned to pneumonia. And 3 days later, he was gone. I mean, we got kicked every way you can imagine. The government there in Western Washington is kind of anti-church. And here we were, still holding services and doing youth group all through COVID. It was hard, people. And I was really tired. And actually was planning a sabbatical when I got a call, an email from Pastor Paul up here. Okay, God has something in mind. Great. We thought this will be great. We'll move up here. We'll take lots of time. We'll take lots of time getting here. We'll just take our time. Pastor Paul said, take as long as you want. Just make sure you're here by the beginning of September. So we did. We rushed it. We got it done. We got up here. And it was hard when we didn't have anywhere to live. You guys remember this? Camping out in the church building for 2 months. It was hard. And I mean, God's doing great things here, and I am so excited about the future of this church. I'm telling you what, if you're watching at home and you can be here, you need to be here. Things are it's just been fantastic what God's been doing in this church. And I'm so excited about the future. But I'm tired. And I'm thinking about Jacob. 20 years he worked for Laban. Worked his tail off. He told us about it. Night and day, in the cold and the hot. Just busting his tail for Laban. Trying to make something happen for himself at the same time. And then he gets shafted by Laban again and again. And now he's on his way over and he's trying to move. You ever tried to move with kids? He's got 11 of them. And the flocks and herds and oh my gosh. There's nothing more exhausting, I think, than moving. And this ain't a small move for him, you know? And then the stress. Can you imagine the emotional ups and downs this guy has been through? Meeting with Laban and that whole mess. Being free from that, woo, and now Esau, wrestling with God, finding peace. Here comes 400 armed men. Oh, but now Esau's kissing and hugging him. Can you imagine the ups and downs? This guy is tired. He's tired out. And so, he just stops. He just stops. I remember reading this for years as a kid and thinking about this and just not quite understanding. Feel like he's doing wrong. Felt like he was doing wrong. Like he shouldn't be doing. Why is he building a house? He's supposed to be a pilgrim. Why is he putting up barns? They're supposed to get back to the promised land. God must be mad. No. Later, in a chapter from now, we're going to see that God says, okay, it's time. Let's go. Let's get back to Bethel where I told you to go. God gives him the chance to rest. Just build a house, Jacob. Just a place where you can go home, sit down in your easy chair, put your feet up at the end of the day. Just rest, Jacob. Just catch your breath. We'll get to Mount Seir later. We'll get to the promised land later. But for now, Jacob, just rest. Wow, I appreciate that. That is just fantastic. I really struggle with the modern concept of loving yourself because we're supposed to deny ourselves. We're not supposed to, I'm just so great. We're supposed to deny ourselves. I was talking with somebody about this with a leader about this at youth camp because that concept had come up. The kids were talking about it. And the leader said, well, yeah, but isn't that kind of what God told Elijah to do? What? It's like, yeah, here he is running from God, hiding in great depression. God comes and says, here, have a snack and a nap. So he had a snack and a nap. And he woke up a day later, and here's God again, making him a new snack. Here, have another snack, take a nap. And he says, the journey's too hard for you. Get some rest. Yeah, get some rest. That's fantastic. Get some rest, Jacob. Get some rest, Jacob. Now, I'm going to keep going here in a second, but I just want to point something out about Mount Seir. I don't want to leave you hanging. Did Jacob ever go to Mount Seir? We're going to read here in just a minute that after his time at Succoth, he crosses the Jordan River, which is this way to you. He crosses the Jordan River to the west, and he goes right to this place we call Shechem. That's where he goes next. So did he ever go to Mount Seir like he told Esau he was going to do? Well, there's no definitive answer. We don't know for sure. But it seems that he did. Because if you flip ahead a few chapters here, up to chapter 36, you find detailed records of Edom. Detailed records of Esau's family. Now, by then, we're done with Esau. The last thing we see on Esau is at the end of chapter 35, where Jacob and Esau, where is it? Verse 29. Isaac took his last breath and died and was gathered to his people old and full days. And his son Esau and Jacob buried him. That's so telling because remember, when people died in that culture, they had to be buried either that day or if it was too late at night, the next day. You buried them right away. And Jacob and Esau have a tight enough relationship at this point that when dad is nearing death, with enough time, there's word sent, Jacob at that point, spoiler alert, living in Bethel, there's word from Jacob to Esau, get over here, dad's dying, and Esau has time to come from Mount Seir and hang out with his dad until he dies and bury him the next day. That's so cool. There's a relationship there between the two. That's wonderful. So obviously, they still have a relationship, but I'm thinking that part of the reason is because at some point, Jacob went to Mount Seir and saw Esau and learned what we read in 36 and developed enough of a relationship between the families that when Joseph went to repeat this story to his children, Manasseh and Ephraim, he knew these details. The only way that's going to be happening is if they had spent some time together. So did he ever go, was he really trying to trick Esau? I don't think so. I think he was exhausted and needed to take a rest. And we are actually going to talk about the whole Shechem thing on Sunday and why he ended up there and what he did there in Shechem and how it was a bad idea. But I don't think he intended to turn his back on Esau. Beautiful, beautiful story of redemption and restoration there in chapter 33. And we learn a few things about grace. We learn a few things about why we need to be surrendered to God and why even as surrendered people we need to continue to give. So that's good stuff. Remember, I am answering questions on Sunday morning. I made a statement this last Sunday morning that got a few questions right out of it. And it's a topic I'm passionate about and will enjoy answering those. And I know Mike had a couple of things he wanted to argue with me about, and I'm down with that. Because there are a few things in life I am more confident in than the inerrancy of Scripture. I might not be competent, but I am confident in that topic. So we will come back together next week. Sunday morning, we'll be talking about Shechem. Make sure you're here for that. Let's stop and pray. Lord, we thank you for deliverance, for how you look over us and deliver us, for how you give us this grace in ways we can't even imagine. Help us, Lord, to be fully surrendered to you.